One of the things I'll tell you either now or toward the end, but I'm going to grab this book because one of you will wish you got this book when I tell you a story about it. As Pastor mentioned when I was done talking in the first talk, the sobering reality we need to face is all the stuff that's happened is the church's fault. It's totally our fault, 100%. And that's sobering when you think about it. You see all this stuff and like, man, why did the people allow this to? It was the church that allowed all this to happen. And so it makes you, one, hopefully be repentant where you go, God, we're sorry, which is always a great place to start. And then say, okay, now I'm choosing to be faithful. Now I'm choosing to not be silent in the face of a lie. Now I'm choosing to protect my children from all these lies that have affected most of our country. Now I'm going to work to have a good marriage so it's an example to all those in my neighborhood, in my home, at work and stuff that don't have good marriages, so they know what they're trying to do. It's always so much easier to do something if you have someone showing you by example what that thing is to do. And that's what the church is supposed to be on the earth. It's the example of here's how you do it. It's easy to tell that when you need a Christian family, well, tell that to a lost family. What does that mean? But if you have a Christian family, say, we're trying to, everything you see in our family, we're just trying to do the things God told us to do. That's all it is. We're not perfect either, but if you see a difference, and I've had so many people come up to my family over the years realizing you don't have to be perfect for them to notice, but you have to be different enough where they go, what are you guys doing? We at a restaurant or something, they'll come over, and, is this a family? And, well, you know, and we're like, we're trying our best to do the things God told us to do. And so, yes, you get a different product, which makes sense. If you redesign a system in a different way, it's going to give you something different than what everybody else is getting, which is so vital to get. I got too many things here. Trying to get to the... but we are, in a sobering time because back in the 1930s, the Humanists in America got together, and with Tom Dewey was one of the founders of the Humanist Society, and they wrote the Humanist Manifesto. So they said, here's what we're doing. And in there, one of the things they talked about is we need to convince Christians in the church that Jesus is just fine, but he cannot come outside the four walls of the church. And unbelievably, most of the mainline denominations, when that came out in 32 or 33, said, oh, sorry. We're sorry for even talking about Jesus in public and stuff. Please forgive us. And so the church went inside the four walls, but they said then in the Humanist Manifesto, we need them to do that because we're going to bring our religion, and they called it a religion of secular humanism, into the marketplace. We want Christianity out of the school so our religion could be in there. They weren't naive to think we're religious and they're not. They know everyone is religious and everything is religious. Religion is simply what you believe. And so they knew that. But look what they've done, where they finally took the prayer out, took God out, took the Ten Commandments out. It's always sobering to me, the 1980 case that took the Ten Commandments out of the schools. Do you know what the Supreme Court justices said why they're taking it out? It just shows, even by 1980, how far we'd fallen. They said, we're taking it out because if it's on the walls of the schools, the students might be prone to read them. And then they went further than that. And if they read them, they might be prone to follow them. And that is religious, so they have to go. Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not lie. That's what they said in 1980. That's why they have to go, because the kid might obey what they're saying, and we can't have that, because that goes against our entire religion we're pushing of secular humanism. That is, if it feels good, do it. That's their religion, because they know that will break down the structures and everything. The pastor wanted me just to quickly go through a short, and I went through a little bit of this in the last talk, but just the significance of the long march through the institutions. Remember, I talked about that a little bit in some different areas, but what that is, because you'll hear that over and over again, and it's a major thing because that's the process they use to do what has been done. But in the Long March, Gramsci's kind of the father of really explaining that, but that's where you go into all the different institutions of influence. And then once you capture those things, then you change the way they're doing things from within the educational system, like we talked about, the media, so the news networks. That's why for so long we had ABC, NBC, and CBS. So easy for them to brainwash us. That's all new. There was no alternative media. There was no internet to go to. There was so you just have these three talking heads that you've picked to spew out your narrative, and everyone, that's your only thing. And so, of course, like the old saying goes, every story sounds true till you hear the other side. So when that's all you got, it's so crazy. We now know those three networks were started, and the main people were picked by the CIA. Is the one that picked ABC, NBC, and CBS, picked the main executives for all those because they knew this is going to be our most valuable tool to get the people to believe what we say, so we don't ever have to use force. If we want to go to war, we just have the talking heads say, it's patriotic, we're fighting for freedom. And we know the American people will have a jerk reflex. Oh, freedom? Yeah, we're for that. And they'll just do it. Or if we don't want to go to war, we'll tell them, oh, this is, killing innocent people or whatever. So they knew they'll be able to manipulate us. Now, we've seen so much of that manipulation in recent times, and they've kind of lost control because of alternative media. They didn't realize how effective COVID showed them. We got a problem. They had no idea people were listening to all these little podcasts and things like my stuff and so many thousands of other people. And so they thought if they do something, they can just control the narrative and everyone will do as they are told. And all of a sudden they realize, there's more people listening to these little podcasts, any individual one that listens to our entire network setup we have for them. CNN now has hardly 200,000 people that watch any of their shows. And there's hundreds of, it's great, hundreds of podcasts that have millions of listens, so it's amazing how that's changed. That's a great blessing. But the Long March is what you'll hear. It's when they marched through all those things, and Hollywood was a key goal. Stalin himself said, if I could control Hollywood, I would rule the world. They knew media is so powerful. And so they go, we got to get in there. But they did that. And then they went into the church as one of the institutions. So they went into the seminaries. And they've just broken down everything. And I had one of my podcasts the summer we left Afghanistan the way we did. I realized even myself, because you don't want to face it, but I realized then, they have the military too. We've always thought that's the last thing on our side. That's conservative, that's, and we realized, no, it's not. Those are radical Marxists, and they're openly now. That summer of the Afghanistan, it wasn't a debacle too. We were prone to use their words to even excuse their, bad things. That was as purposeful as you'd ever get. We left $85 billion worth of weapons there, which is more than most countries of the world have in their totality. And then China has bought all of them up from them. And it was all our latest stuff. So they're taking apart all our weapons, all our tanks, all our helicopters. And we just shipped the latest of everything there, and we leave it. 85 billion, not million, $1 billion worth. And it was all strategic because those in power are hoping and looking forward to China ruling the world. But anyway, that's the Long March. It's the process of going in, capturing those things, and then turning them against the people and the country itself. Sometimes when you look at all the things going on, you feel like, what can I do? It feels like hopeless, helpless, we're finished, and we might be finished, but it's never hopeless or helpless. And so I'm going to talk just for a minute going through a few things that we need to do individually and as families to prepare for the storm that's coming, because it's coming. I promise you that. It's crystal clear, and I know it's coming because the Bible says you reap what you have sown. And when we've given our children over to the system for 70 years to raise, then you realize when 70% of the young people go, we want socialism, you know one thing for certain, you're going to have socialism, period, because they're the adults very soon. So, but the lie that Satan will push on all of us is my little nothing is nothing, and that is totally false. We see, I love one of my favorite stories in the Bible I always use, because it's the little boy with the loaves and fishes. What did he have to offer, Lord? Nothing. We would say not feeding 15,000 people with the men, women, and children. That's not a help at all. One little boy's lunch, that is not helpful. We need enough food for 15,000 people. And of course, with Jesus, it was plenty, and there was leftovers. And so that's the key you have to remember as a Christian. The reason I'm obeying what God's told me to do is because he told me to do it. I'll let him worry about how the things fall out, how the things go. I get emails from people concerned about me, which is sweet. You know, you're going to end up in a prison. I go, I very well could, but that just means I have a prison ministry. If I'm there, Jesus is sitting right next to me, so that means we have to have that confidence in that. Anything he allows you to go through, he is with you through it, and he has a purpose in it. It's never, oh, he forgot me, or I'm on my own, or what should I do? Ever. It's never like that. One of the January 6ers that's still in there 3 years, they haven't even tried to convict him of anything, no trial, anything. I was listening to an interview, somebody called in there and got him talking, and it was just great. He's like, yeah, it's been rough. He's lost 65 pounds since he's been in there. But he said, we baptized 3 people this last week in the prison. And the guy's like, how'd you baptize them? He said, with just the water out of the sinks, we just poured it over their heads. And I go, isn't that, God uses everything. So just know that with utter confidence. Paul spent a lot of his life in prison, and Silas. And what were they doing after they'd been beaten viciously? They were singing hymns, because they were so grateful they had opportunity to suffer for the Lord. Again, our mindset has changed so much because it's been so Americanized. We don't want to suffer anything. I don't want to miss a meal. I don't want to. That's not the stock we came from. If you read Fox's Book of Martyrs, and I encourage you to, out loud to your families, fathers, edit the stuff that's a little too gruesome, but I read that to my kids when they were young, and we would cry while we're reading it, realizing, oh my word, the people we came from, the stock of people that have followed the Lord are the finest human beings that have ever existed. And like the Bible says, this earth was not worthy of them even being here. Well, that's us. But we need to live like that. That's talking about us if we'll stand up. Alexander Solzhenitsyn he was a writer in the Soviet Union. He was most of his life spent in the gulags over there, but he would write papers out and slip them out and write books on what was going on. His books were the first books we got to read in the West about what it was to live under communism. We didn't have a clue. We just had the brainwashing from the media. That, it's a paradise on earth. They're working for a workers' world and all this stuff. Well, his books came out, all of a sudden people realized, oh my word. We didn't even know that could be possible, that human beings could treat other human beings like that. Well, in the 1970s, when he was getting moved to a prison, he thought he was going back into another gulag, but he wasn't. He was being released to come to America. He wrote his last essay and you ought to read it. You can find it online. It's called Live Not by Lies. And he wrote this essay. It's not that long, but he wrote it to the Russian people. And it's so powerful if you take the time to read it today. But he left that there, and it spread all over the Soviet Union. But he said in that so many things. He just said, we can no longer, stand in the presence of a lie and not confront it like I told you at the beginning. That's from him. He said, if we're at a theater or at a work meeting, anything, and someone speaks a lie, we must stand up and walk out. We cannot allow that to happen. That's what's caused it to implode in on us like this, because no one will stand up. So when one person won't stand up, the next person won't, then nobody does. So you're all like just sheep sitting there in fear. And so, but he wrote that in, started spreading around the Soviet Union. And by the early 80s, it's part of the thing that led to them saying, okay, we got to go to Plan B. They started to have protests for the first time ever in the Soviet Union. But it was from that essay. People read it, were inspired, and realized, if I have to die, I have to die. Some things are worth dying for. Anyway, amazingly, he all of a sudden gets released to America. He comes. This is in the late 70s in America. And Harvard University invites him to come speak. He's one of the greatest writers of the 20th century. And when he comes up to speak, the students boo him off the stage, because he's always against the Soviets. That's how they'd been brainwashed. Harvard University in the 70s. And he was just, he couldn't believe it. And he, in many of his essays, then when he came to America, talks about, you guys have already fallen, you don't understand it. When I'm coming here, I'm like, you don't understand. This is all Marxism that's being taught in the schools. This is what it is. But he, again, was a powerful example to us just how far we come. And the one question he was asked by the media when he came off the plane into America, and he had been a famous writer because his books were incredible, he was very gifted. They said, why did Russia fall to communism? And you probably know his answer, but it's amazing to me. All the things he could say, especially as a gifted orator and stuff, he could have said so many things. And all he said was this: we forgot God. That's all he said. That was his answer. Why did we fall to communism? We forgot God. Why are we falling to communism today? We forgot God. It's inevitable. All communism is what the society you create when you don't allow God to be part of it. When you reject his principles, you end in communism, and that's the only place you can end. That's man's system where it ends. And so, but he was, anyway, great guy. But the live not by lies, I just want to encourage you that. Look at your life, and you fathers. Do you consistently do and act in the way you encourage your children to? I mean, it's something we all have to look in the mirror and ask those questions, because God knows. We can fool, it's easy to fool people around you. Young people, it's easy to fool your parents, but you cannot fool God. He knows what's in your heart. He knows if you're listening, if you're obeying, if you care about his ways and his principles. And if you do, he sees that. And it's so wonderful. He's like the ultimate accountability partner. Whether something's to stop you from evil, you realize he's standing right with me. What kind of fool would be looking at something he shouldn't on a computer or something and go, nobody knows about it? That's a practical atheist. And so many Christians are prone to be like that. We can't do that. He's either exists or he doesn't. And if he does, that means he is God. And so, but I love it too. The reverse of that, young people, is so true. When you're doing good and no one noticed, no one thanked you, he did. And he said it will go, you're going to reap the reward of that. I'm watching everything. So it's so encouraging. It's like, if I'm just faithful in doing the right thing for the right reasons every time, I'm going to be rewarded for all the things, good things I did that no one noticed, but I did them for the Lord because I knew he was watching. And then also, I'm going to be spared a life of heartache when my life collapses because I'm living by lies. I'm saying I'm going to church and doing the things that I'm supposed to do, but behind the scenes I'm not. Well, I'm just telling you, if any of you are doing that, hopefully no one is, it will eventually fall. It's like the man who built his house upon the sand. It finally falls with a great collapse because God just doesn't allow those lies to continue. So I want to encourage you in that. So here, just a list of some different things I've jotted down to share with people over time. But need to stand for the truth. You need to really work at hating what is evil. That the Bible tells us that is wisdom, is to hate what is evil. Our society says, no, you shouldn't hate anything. You're supposed to just be all this, whatever. But the Bible says, no. The fear of the Lord is to hate what is evil. Excuse me. We need to continue to defend the defenseless. And that's a great example of that, of course, is the pro-life movement. Expose the lies, build back what's been broken down. We need to look at our life and compare it to 150 years ago in America. How did the Christians that lived then do their life? Thank you. Are there major differences? And if they are, or for what reason have we changed what we do? I've noticed we're so prone to just keep moving the ancient landmarks. And God says, don't do that. Don't move the ancient landmarks. And different things, whether it's, just church, since I was a boy in America, has changed dramatically. Has it changed for the better? Even in good churches or not? But we need to look at that. When you look back at the 1500s, 1600s, 1700s, 1800s and stuff, you go, there was a lot of consistency in the way people worshiped God and the way we did church services and the way we lived our life and the way we treated Sundays and the way we did so many things. Are any of those things we are not doing like that today? Do we have a biblical reason why? Or have we just said, I don't want to do it anymore, it's a pain to do that? And so I just encourage you in that, and that's something I'm always reflecting on, because I know you're always prone to think you have the best and the latest. But I look back at Charles Spurgeon's era as I read his stuff, and I go, they had different beliefs about how we do what we do and things, and we want to make sure we're not changing just for the sake of change. Of course, sharing the gospel is vital. If you look at all the statistics and stuff, so few Christians are faithful in doing that. So few. If you're not good at that, and of course, Satan wants us all to feel like we're not good at doing that, because he wants us to feel like, oh, they're going to get mad at me or whatever. He'll keep throwing those darts at us to get us. But one of the things I've found that's been a huge blessing to my life is Ray Comfort. I don't know if you know that name at all or not, but he has this a YouTube channel stuff called Living Waters. But I went through his little course 20 years ago, and I will say of just how to just share the gospel with a total stranger. Maybe you meet him in 30 seconds, how to build a friendship with him, and then how to just talk to him about meaningful things. And I did that 20 years ago, and it's been the single greatest blessing of my entire Christian life. I've had hundreds of opportunities sitting next to people on planes or whatever, or sitting down next to a guy sitting on the sidewalk there at the store or whatever, and just sharing the gospel with them, but in a way that it finally makes sense for them. They realize they've broken God's laws. They realize they're guilty. They realize hell is a just thing that God created to punish evil. They just, and it's just a way he just kind of studied how God would confront people in the Bible with the law and then show them what he had done. So he didn't invent it, but he came up with a great way of doing it. He is such a blessing. And through his little course, he also gave you a great answer for, there's only so many different things people say to you. And I remember I watched through all his videos, and then I was with one of my friends. We lived in Idaho at the time, and we thought, okay, let's go. We're going to go to Boise State University and try this out. And we thought, well, for us, it's not going to be like that. The second college student we were talking to, my friend and I, started weeping. Tears just running down his cheeks. And I realized it's the message. It's this. It's not you. It's not me. It's not Ray Comfort. He has been faithful for 50 years, every single week, to go on the streets of Southern California, where it's about the roughest crowd you could have, and confront them with the law lovingly and kindly, but then where they know when you're done talking to them, if nothing else, they know they are guilty of breaking God's law. They deserve hell, and that's where they are going if they don't turn to Jesus Christ in repentance. And I always get them to say that to me. Do you understand that? Do you get hit here? Do you understand? Yes. Okay. Because you can't make them do anything, and you're not supposed to. You're supposed to plant those seeds. But I've had so many incredible opportunities to be faithful because I felt prepared. And then I don't know, but that's something, if the church was living differently and then telling the world why we're living differently, I think things would change so dramatically, so quickly. It's the church is on the earth to show the world there's hope. And when the church lives are falling apart the same as the world, then the world looks and goes, there's nothing there. And then they go to something else in the world, drugs or whatever, to try to numb their conscience because they know, yeah, there's big problems, but I don't know what to do about them. So I just want to encourage you that. Then these are just some, well, actually, I'm going to tell a few stories here first. And then in Q&A, we'll get into more of some of these other things. Okay, Pastor liked this story, and I do too, so I'm going to tell it. It has to do with this book no one got. I'm going to auction off afterwards, starting at $100 when we're done. But no, these are practical stories from my family about how when you give your loaves and fishes to the Lord, He feeds the 5,000. You don't have to do that. But you have to give whatever you have, your little nothing, you do have to give it to Him. And then He parts the Red Sea or does whatever He wants to do. 1961, my mom and dad lived in St. Louis, Missouri. They just recently got married. My dad was working full-time for McDonnell Douglas, and he was full-time in graduate school, so he was really busy. My mom was pregnant with my sister, and she had to stay on bed rest for the pregnancy because she had already lost 4 children in a row, and the doctor said, you can't get out of bed, so she stayed in bed. But while she was in bed, she started reading and understanding. One of the books she happened to read was a book called Masters of Deceit by J. Edgar Hoover. J. Edgar Hoover was the founder and head of the FBI. And in 1958, he wrote this book. And in it, he said, if you Americans don't wake up, these masters of deceit are going to take you over from within, the communists. And he has a whole section here on the church. They're going into the seminaries and divinity schools and education. They're going into the teachers' colleges and taking over. On Hollywood, they're going into the studios. They're going all over. And he said, wake up. We are falling to communism right now. In 1958, my mom read it, and it shook her up. And she said, oh my goodness, she talked to my dad, said, Jim, you got to read this book. He said, I don't have time to read a book. I'm working full-time in school full-time. Finally, he read the book. And then I just love it. It's my parents, and I had great parents. But they're in their 20s, living in St. Louis, Missouri. Neither one of them were from there. He was there for school. And they said, how can we make a difference? And here's what they did. My mom would be home in bed all day, every day, so she got all the St. Louis newspapers delivered to the home. And she'd get those papers each day and read all the letters to the editor. And when she read one by someone that got it, they understood what was going on. She'd call them up and say, we need to connect with them. They understand what's going on. So she'd call them up and she'd go, we need you to start a small group in your home. And I normally don't tell this part of the story, but he'll right there. Over time, them and the people that they started from started over 10,000 small groups in America, but that's besides a point. But so they did that. So what they would do is she'd read them and she'd call them and say, we need you to set up a meeting in your home this Thursday night, and my husband's going to come over and give a 2-hour lecture on communism. And so they would do this one night a week, even though they were so busy. Well, my dad tells me the story. He said, I came home one night, and it was pouring down rain, and I was just totally shot. And right when I walk in the door, Mom says, I got a meeting set up for you tonight. And he's like, no way. I am too tired. Cancel it or whatever. And she talked him into it. She said, you need to go. You don't know who might be there. So he went. And he drove across town, and probably because of the rain, only a couple people showed up. But he was faithful in the little things. And he gave the few people his lecture, 2-hour lecture on communism. When he was done, one of the men that was there came up to my dad and said, if half of what you said is true, we are in serious trouble. And my dad said, well, that's why I'm doing this, even though I'm so busy. They became really good friends. He started borrowing all my dad's books and things he'd read. And in a couple of months, he knew more than my dad. And he came to my dad and said, Jim, I'm going to quit my job and write a book about this. And my dad's like, don't get carried away. He said, nope, I've looked at my savings. I have enough savings to last 2 years. So he quit his job. He took 2 years to research and write a book. He finished it January of 1964, but he couldn't get anybody to publish it because he'd never written a book before. So he self-published it. Now remember 64 America. There's no internet, obviously. There's no credit cards. If you want a copy of his book, you literally have to go to the back page, tear out the little form there, fill it out, and send him cash or check in the mail. It's not available in a bookstore in America. He's selling it out of his garage. And in 8 months, in 1964, out of his garage, he sold 6 million copies. And when Ronald Reagan was elected president of the United States, he said in 1980, I would never have been elected president of the United States if John Stormer in 1964 had not written the book, None Dare Call It Treason, the book from the man that came to my dad's meeting. It started the entire conservative movement in America. And I just tell you that to encourage you. You might not be the person to write the book, but you might be the person to influence the person that writes the book. One of your children might be the person to write the book. And we just have to be faithful with what God's given us to do. Another quick story about my parents. So he finishes up there, gets his PhD in electrical engineering. There's a new university starting in Tampa, Florida called University of South Florida. And they just started in 1965, and my mom's pregnant with me. And they moved to Tampa, and I'm born, and they're there. And I remember I'm probably 7 or 8 years old in the early 70s. This is another, how effective we can be if we're strategic, if we're purposeful, if we're thinking about things instead of just complaining about them. My dad brings home the school newspaper, and it said on the campus there, University of South Florida, they're getting ready to put up this huge Picasso statue. And it's called Bust of a Woman, and it's just a bunch of twisted metal. And my mom saw, I never forget breakfast, she saw that there, and my dad goes, look what they're getting ready to do at our campus. And my mom saw that, and she's a sweet, wonderful lady. She goes, they will not put that up on that campus. And my dad goes, they won't? And she goes, no, they will not. That is a disgusting disgrace. So here's what she did. She sat down, and she wrote 8 different letters to the editor, all coming from a different perspective. She wrote one as a feminist. How dare you call that bust of a woman a bunch of twisted metal? It doesn't look anything like the bust of a woman. And kind of stirred up from a feminist point of view, why this is a disgrace to act like this is something to do with women, just twisted metal. And she wrote one with her own name on it. She always had many friends all growing up that would let they would let her use her name. So she always wrote many, many letters. They're still older, and they still, the St. Pete Times, Tampa Tribune, they have stuff in there all the time still. But that was one of the ways they tried to make a difference. So anyway, she wrote one as a professor's wife. And she said, man, because it was costing like $1.5 million, something, which in the early 70s, that was a lot of money. And so she wrote, wow, as a professor's wife, I'm just shocked they would have the money to put up something like that with how little they pay the professors. And my dad's on campus, and every single one of her letters are published, coming from different names. She had 8 different names to use. And he saw all the opposition starting to build up against it from the different things, like the professors and the teachers were like, look at that, that is ridiculous. Why are they wasting that money? They could pay us more and stuff. My dad's just quietly sitting there, you know. Anyway, it's pretty neat. That thing they had announced is being built in the spring. It's coming, whatever. Not only is it not there when you go there today, they were so humiliated by the backlash, they never even said they were canceling the project. They just never brought it up again. And we still had the original papers that said this is being built next spring, and it just disappeared. That's one homemaker using her time wisely to strategically attack evil and say, no, you're not wasting, you're not putting something up there. She wrote one from as an artist, I can't remember all of them, but how like this twisted metal, why don't we get a real artist to do a real sculpture or something that would be beautiful and something that add value to the campus instead of something that's by someone famous that doesn't have a clue about art. So anyway, but that's another story that I love. How many of you have seen Agenda 2 Masters of Deceit? That's the second film, a different one. Okay, just a few of my friends. So I have to tell you one other personal story. This is so important too. I'm telling you these stories to inspire you to realize if you are born again, God is your God too, and he can do whatever he wants to do with you, but you have to be willing to do it. He doesn't make you do something that you're not doing, but when your heart is set on him and you're like, no, I want to do what you put me on this earth to do. Whatever you knit me together inside my mother's womb to do, I want to do that. What is it? Most people have never asked. Most Christians, I would say, have never asked. I'm just telling you, it's sobering. I, at 32, finally gave my life to the Lord, and because I realized, I'd been raised in a Christian home and stuff, but I realized I'm always telling God what to do. Bless my business, do this, make me this, do this. And he, at that age, he humbled me and sobered me, and I said, I am sorry for wasting 32 years of my life. What did you put me on this earth to do? I want to know, and I will do it if you please make it clear to me. And I could tell you that whole story. I don't have time for it, but it's amazing all the things he's done in my life since then. One of the things, he had me make a film. But I had already submitted to him, and then now a few years later, all these different amazing things have happened where the governor calls me to appoint me to be a representative when I don't know the governor from anybody, and all these things that were part of God's plan, because he wanted me to make those movies, and he wanted me to do different things. And so I'm a representative there in Idaho. I'm starting to be convicted by so much of this information. Some of it I'm relearning. I'd learned when I was a kid with my parents, and then some of it's new. I'm realizing, oh my goodness, people need to know about what's happening to our country. And I was stirred up, God, how do I let them know? It was a heavy burden. I felt I'm responsible for letting them know. How do I do that? And months went by, and I was praying about it, and finally, I realized he wants me to make a movie. Now, a lot of you that don't know me well, which is most of you, my background's not in film. I've never made a film in my life. I don't know anything about making a film. I've never done that. Okay, so it's not like that's what I've always wanted to do, and I've studied and nothing. I'm a representative, been in the restaurant business my entire life, representative, and now I come across all this information. It's heavy on my heart. I go, God, people need to know. He's like, make a movie. Like, I don't know how to make a movie. Make a movie. God, I don't even know where to start. Well, how would I do that? And finally, thankfully, I'm so grateful I obeyed. I said, okay, but you have to help me because I don't know what I'm doing. And one of the things we found, there was a Christian little film academy down in San Antonio, Texas. It was 3 days long, and I'd gotten an email about that, and I thought, oh, I'll go to that and see if I can figure out for sure if I should do this film or not. I went to that. While I was there, I met so many young young people, 17, 18-year-old, they were already great at it. And I realized, okay, you don't have to have done this for 20 years because these people are 17, 18, and they are doing this kind of thing. So that God used that to encourage me. And I asked those young guys, I still know them today, now they're in their 40s, but I was like, what kind of camera do I get? And what kind of editing software? And I asked them everything, just took notes, and what kind of lights? And I wrote it all down. Anyway, I came home and I said, the family knew that's why I'd gone, and I realized, okay, I'm supposed to make a film. And so everybody was there in our family, my kids, and I said, Daddy's going to make a film because I think that's what God wants me to do. Now, I've just finished being a representative. I'd sold the rest of the stuff, so I didn't have any income at all. And now I feel God wants me to make a movie, which is a long process, trust me, blood, sweat, and tears. But now I know, and he knows I'm the kind that needs to know, is this what you want me to do? Then I'm happy, win, lose, or draw. But I want to make sure I'm not, deceiving myself or doing something because I want to do it, but it's not really the right thing, which we're all prone to do. But I finally said, okay, we're going to make this movie. That night, and some of you know this story, but I always told God I'd tell it as often as I can because it makes him look good, like he is. We were saying our prayers. I've just told my family, Daddy's making a movie. Never done that, don't have a clue, but that's what I'm doing. My son Christian, who was 5 years old at the time, just a little boy, it came to his turn to pray as we were saying our prayers before we went to bed. And he had heard us talk about this big film festival, in Texas that had this big grand prize. He'd heard that about a month before, and now he hears Daddy say, I'm going to make a film. In this sweet little prayer of a child, he said, Dear God, help Papa's film to win the festival. And we all started laughing. He's talking about the film festival. I just said I'm making a film. He prays that it wins this big film festival. We laughed and went to bed. A few days later, my oldest daughter, Carolina, who I think was 14 at the time, she came to me and she said, Daddy, why don't we fast and pray this Friday that your film wins that festival? And I was like, that's a really good thing to do. And my mind as a father was thinking, I don't want my kids to think God's just a puppet or something that you can make him do what you want him to do. But oh, that's a good thing. Let's do that. But my mind's like, I'm never going to win a film festival. I don't know what I'm doing. So we did it. We fasted and prayed, God, help our film. I haven't started on, don't have a clue about, help it to win this $101,000 grand prize film festival. So we prayed that. A week went by, I came down, and it was Friday, and Carolina was in charge of breakfast. There was no breakfast. I said, Sweetie, where's breakfast? She goes, Daddy, it's Friday. And I said, oh, are we fasting this week too? And she goes, we're fasting every week until it wins. So to make a long story short, we started to work on figuring out how to work a camera, how to do stuff, how everything. It took us almost 2 years to finish the film, full-time, 10 hours a day. We did it as a family. We have so many neat things. But we went to that film festival. We entered it in. And when they came to the last prize of the night for the best of festival and the $101,000 check, they called out Agenda, our film, and it won that. I'm just telling you, God's still alive and well. I think our society has acted like he doesn't exist, so a lot of Christians live like he doesn't either. He can do whatever he wants to do, whenever he wants to do it. He loves parting the Red Sea, but he will not part the Red Sea if we do not hold up our staff. He will not do it, because he is the way he's designed the universe in his amazing way. He has made us part of it. He could just do whatever he wanted on this. So he could, no, you are my hands and feet there. You are going to do my work. You're going to speak my words. You're going to send the missionaries out. You're going to be a missionary. You're going to do that stuff. That's the way I've designed it. And if he's not sent, then who's going to tell them? He tells us that crystal clear. No, we're part of this thing. But when we're not part of this thing, then it's like he's got all these people. They won't do anything. They won't say anything. But that's why our country is where it is. But I love that story. One, it's a personal story, but it's God still alive and well. And my children had the faith to know. Well, in fact, when we walked off the stage, I love this part of it too. We walked off the stage that night. There's thousands of people there. It's a big thing. I said to them, I can't believe God did this. And my daughter Carolina said, I knew the first day we fasted he was going to do it. And I said, that's why he did it. This is yours. And I said, you can have this. And I gave that to my kid. I go, because you believe, that's why he did it. You just had the faith of a child. Well, of course God can have Daddy's film win if he wants. And they had total confidence in God, which was so neat to see. But that's why I won. It wasn't for me. I know that. I was, yeah, that'd be neat. But I had 1,000 excuses like we're all prone to do. When we live in this world that has a good excuse why they didn't do anything they're supposed to do, but we can't as Christians do that. What was the time again on this? This section?
You're okay, you have a few more minutes.
Okay, a couple more. Okay, so I'm going to just, and then we're going to do questions in 1 second. I had a few of these quotes and things I want to read to you. They're really helpful. We need to pray, prepare, separate, and share. Okay. Pray. We need to be more active. Our prayer life needs to be far more active. When you pray about things, God gets involved with them, so they have 1,000 times the effect if you just go work hard at something, but you're not praying about it. We need to be praying. We need to prepare because, like I said at the beginning, there's storm clouds coming, and that means it's going to rain. And so only a fool, even Proverbs says, a wise man seeth trouble and he hideth himself. He's like, oh, okay, I better. So I encourage you to be as independent as you possibly can be, especially in your church community where you're able to provide a lot of just the necessities of life in case some terrible thing, and there's a million different things that could happen. But just if it did happen, you're not so dependent on this system that's rotten anyway. And they're purposely collapsing, whether it's the food supply systems or things. You can see worldwide they're setting up the conditions to erase hundreds of millions of people that they're wanting to get rid of anyway, but it'll be the excuse, oh, climate change, we weren't able to grow crops, and that's why all these people are dying. It's not, no, you cut down the nitrogen fertilizer, you closed the farms, you made them kill their cattle. It won't be that. It'll be blamed on their big, scary, non-existent thing called climate change. So, preparing is just wise. Because, and to prepare beyond yourself. If a Christian at a time of crisis says, oh, we have some food, come over, we'll feed you, that's really powerful when everyone else is starving, scared, and doesn't know what to do. So that's one of the key reasons a Christian needs to be prepared. So the widow down the street who doesn't have a clue what's going on in the world, you need to have enough stuff for her too. So sweetie, we got it right, come down here at mealtime, we've got all the food you need, you're fine. But we need to be, so that's why we prepare, so we're not caught off guard. We're not fearful in the midst of the storm because we've prepared for the storm, so we're ready. Yep, I knew this was going to happen. When Marxists are teaching our children for 70 years, we're going to at some point have a civil war or something going on, so I'm ready for that if that is to happen. And then, of course, separate out from the world. Turn the TV off. Don't be watching the junky movies and the books and the music and the stuff. It's all been captured purposefully to accomplish this goal of collapsing our culture and our country from within. The whole rock and roll industry, back, I don't have time to get into that, but as you study the roots of any of these things that grew up in our country, of course Satan is behind them, but the Marxists are behind them too. John Lennon himself was a hardcore communist. He wrote the song for the American Revolution that would kill all of us called Working Class Hero. And he, back in the early 70s, in the midst of the Soviet empire, they would interview him all the time on the Soviet papers, and he'd talk about what they're doing to take America down from within. It was all a plan. Drugs, sex, and rock and roll is all my brain and body needs. That was their slogan. It was to destroy the young people, to fracture the culture, to create rebellion so they could hopefully get the communist revolution. But like I said earlier, it didn't happen. And so they said, that's okay. If we keep rotting them from within, they will fall. And so it's so much of this stuff I could go into for hours, but we don't need to. But you separate out from that because it's purposely toxic to you and all your children and family. And then you have to be sharing the gospel. We're not supposed to hide our light under a bushel. We're supposed to separate out. It tells us be separate. You're not supposed to be your best buddies, all these lost people and stuff, and hanging out with them and watching their stuff. But we're supposed to be separate. But then when we come in contact, when we're there with them, we are a great light to them of love, kindness, truth. And they see, man, you're different. And like, yeah, I sure am. Let me tell you why. It's so important. There are millions of people waking up all over America right now, so that's some good news for you. I get to travel a lot, and places I've been to many times in the past, I'm going back to now, and there's all new people there, and they don't have a clue about anything, but they're awake. COVID woke up another 20, 30 million people to the lies. See, what's wonderful, why we need to be out there, when you wake up, especially if you're 40, 50, 60 years old, and realize everything they've taught me my whole life is a lie, you are fuming mad, one. I mean, and no one likes to be used like that. And they're waking up from COVID, but then when they see that was a lie, but then they see, oh my goodness, your eyes, once you can see the lies, you start to see more and more, you realize, oh my goodness, the whole culture is a lie, everything about it. But it makes you start looking for the truth. So that's why then I come and speak and some basic things and get things going. But the ultimate truth is Jesus. So you know he is the truth. And as people are looking for the truth, we want to keep pushing them down that road. Maybe they'll go through a lot of the conspiracy theories or whatever and see, hey, a lot of those have a lot of stuff to them. Yeah, they sure do, unfortunately. And then you keep going. But here's the thing. Yeah, it's a monster. You can do nothing about yourself. But there is a God, and he's in total control. And he's allowing this because we as Christians we're not faithful to raise the next generation to love and fear him. Do you know Ronald Reagan in 1984, in that election, he won 49 states. 49. And I always think, I go, showing what an important job you have as parents. If the parents that voted for Ronald Reagan in 1984, if they'd done nothing else except raise their children to know the difference between the truth and a lie, what America was really all about. If they were Christians, then all the Christian things. If they weren't even Christians, to teach them true American history and stuff, we'd have a 95% majority today of people that were freedom-minded, conservative-minded people. But they took all those kids. All the people that voted for Reagan in 84, their kids voted for Obama in 2008 because they gave them over to the system to raise. Oh, it'll be okay. I was in those schools. I mean, it's so ridiculous. It's like and they think they're the same then as they were now. It's ridiculous. And now with this transgender stuff and everything, it's so toxic and such poison for our sweet children. Couple quotes and then we'll do questions. William Booth said this 100 years ago. He's the one that started the Salvation Army. I love this quote because I love when people, because they know the truth, are able to project into the future, here's what's going to happen if you stay on this road, because I know where this road leads. He said this 100 plus years ago. The chief danger that confronts the coming century, he's talking about the 20th century, will be religion without the Holy Ghost, Christianity without Christ, forgiveness without repentance, salvation without regeneration, and politics without God, and heaven without hell. It's exactly. He wasn't a prophet. He was a man that loved, understood truth, and he saw back in the late 1800s, this is where you're walking. This is the road, and this is what you will end up believing on that road. I mean, it's unbelievable. I was at a conference I was speaking at in Florida just a few months ago, and the pastor that came that spoke there, and when he said, I go, he's 100% right. He goes, our main goal now for the church in America, our main thing, and he went on about this, he goes, we have to reach the church with Christ. But he's dead serious. He goes, we have to, because you have a Christless church, it then makes the world look at the church and go, nothing there. And he goes, that's our number one goal, to reach the church with Christ. But anyway, isn't that amazing? It's right where we are. Politics without God. He saw that in the 1800s, where you couldn't conceive a political system that's not grounded in God and his principles. That's going to end in tyranny. It sure did. Here's one other one here. Here's one other one by William Booth, too. I grabbed some of that stack. I have stacks like this at home of stuff. I'm like, what do I talk about this time? I don't want to say the same thing every time, so I just grab different things and hope it comes out all right. Pray God help me say something. Listen to this. This is important for you. And don't raise hands or anything, but how many, I'm asking these questions for you to answer in your own mind and heart. How many of you have shared the gospel this week with someone? Don't raise hands. You're answering that mine. No, I haven't, or yes, I have. Okay, or this last month, or this last year. Just think about that for a minute. Here's what William Booth wanted to encourage the troops with. Not called, did you say? Not heard the call, I think you should say. Put your ear down to the Bible and hear him bid you go and pull sinners out of the fire of sin. Put your ear down to the burdened, agonizing heart of humanity and listen to its pitiful wail for help. Go stand by the gates of hell and hear the damned entreat you to go to their Father's house and bid their brothers and sisters and servants and masters not to come here. Then look Christ in the face, whose mercy you have professed to obey, and tell him whether you will join heart and soul and body and circumstances in the march to publish his mercy to the world. You know, we have it. It's everything. I one time was listening to this Christian radio station, and a guy called in. This is a long time ago, but he called in. He'd been a homosexual, and he gave his testimony on there. He goes, at 20 years old, I moved to New York City. I got into the underground homosexual movement. For 20 years, I was in that. His name was Pavel. And then at 40 years old, he got saved. And he goes, I'm 60 years old right now. I'm in my hospital bed and I'm dying of AIDS. And he goes, and he said so many things. I was crying while I was listening to it in my car. But he said this, it was so powerful. I go, man, why don't we get it like this? He said, it took me all that pain and suffering and searching to find out one simple principle in life. If you have Jesus, you have everything that there is. And if you do not have Jesus, you have absolutely nothing. He said, I don't care if you're the richest man in the world. And he just said that so clearly. I was like, I can't wait to give him a hug in heaven. He was lied to the world trying to look for fulfillment. Goes there, gets in that, 20 years, gets AIDS, and now he's dying, but he found Christ. And he said this too, he goes, since I got saved at 40, I've been totally morally pure in every way. I remember him saying that too, and I was like, oh, isn't that God? That's God can do that. Take someone out of the pit of hell on this earth in that community and just polish them up, clean them spotless, and then have them say something that is one of the most powerful things I've ever heard in my entire life from anyone. But I tell you that because it's true. He's worth following. Young people, if you at your age said, I am all in, God, what do you want me to do? You would be blown away by the time you're my age. You'd go, I cannot believe it. I cannot believe it. I had my list of things I'd like to do, most of them pretty meaningless, and this is what God has done with my life. I had that. I mean, I'm just telling you, I've lived that small scale. At 32, I was very successful at 32. People looked at me, man, he's got everything. I had nothing. And when I said, God, I am all in, forgive me, now I look at the things he's done that have eternal value, and I go, wow. I wonder if I'd have used the first 32 years, what you would have done. But I'm just telling you, just if you, hopefully you've seen enough in your parents' life and this church's life where you know, yes, there is a God, okay? And I'm telling you, he's the God of the Bible. And there's only one God, which is logical. If there was more than one God, the stronger one would kill the other one off. I mean, the world loves to keep all this confusion out there. There is one God. We know it because we see the stars in the heavens. And he's the God of the Bible because he told us exactly how he did everything he did. But I'm telling you, young people, if you just said, okay, I want to give my life to the Lord. I'm not just getting saved. I'm giving him then I'm saying, you are the master. I am the slave. What do you want me to do? I have no plans. I'm just going to be faithful to do with excellence everything you give me one day at a time. And I'm asking you to chart the course and you do with my life whatever you knit me together to do. And I'm telling you, I just know what he's done with me. And I'm like, I don't feel like I had anything to offer, but again, he doesn't need much. But I'm just telling you, if you did it, and I don't care what your age is, parents, whatever age you actually do that, I'm in. Sorry for wasting and pretending and acting like I had something else going. I want to serve you. And I want you to do something with my life because I know you didn't put me here for no reason. And I promise you, he will answer that prayer because it's glorifying to him. He will 100% of the time answer that prayer in a way that when you're old on your deathbed and look back and go, unbelievable. Unbelievable. And every single one of you that hears this, young people, and says, I want to go see what the world has to offer first. I promise you, on your deathbed, you'll say, I wish I would have listened to Mr. Bowers and my pastor and my parents. I so wish I would have listened. I wasted the most precious thing God had given me, all my time on nothingness. Oh, and the saddest words of tongue of pen are these 4 words, what might have been. It's a tragedy when something doesn't happen that could have been so wonderful and everything. So I think we're time for questions or whatever, but anyway, I'm sorry that I'm a Christian, as you know. That's why he has me here in a church. But a lot of my meetings, it's not Christian people I tell them the same talk. So I'm a Christian. I'm sorry, I can't not say these things because they're most important. And if you get it, you got it. And if you do it, it produces pure gold. And if you don't and you buy the deceptions and lies, you will reap what you have sown and have the misery of a life that was nothing when it could have been so much. Because right now, the light, the salt is needed so desperately that if we just go, I'm in, you're going to be the Davy Crockett's of the next generation, the whatever. You're going to be the people like, man, I want to be like that guy or whatever, because the one they're looking up to because they were all in for Jesus. But anyway, any questions from anybody?